by Roddy Doyle, and I named my presentation Life Can Suck, but it goes on because my story is very depressing, but I found the light in it at the end, I guess. The calm before the storm. So it's a really depressing story. It's narrated by the main character. He is 10 years old, and his name is Paddy Clarke. He comes of age pretty roughly in a fictional town called Barrytown in Ireland, but his sad story isn't very uncommon, so I feel like the readers can really connect with it, and it's easy for them to do that. The whole prose is basically a stream of consciousness coming from Paddy, and he just basically observes everything around him, and you see his mental state deteriorate, basically. Ultimately, I think the message of the story is pretty positive, and it encourages the reader to keep on in life no matter what you're struggling with. And we can get this encouragement in seeing all the little details of the main character's struggle to cope with everything he's thrown into. Paddy's life at home in the beginning is all right. It's calm, he can't complain about anything, there's little sense of uneasiness, but he does catch and hold on to the little negative interactions between his parents, and that's a little foreshadowing where things are going to blow up eventually for him. Also at school, he can't seem to shake his bad reputation. He's 10 years old, so it's normal for little boys to have a bad reputation at school, but eventually that's going to switch in the story where school is his getaway from the rough life at home. So things go bad. Paddy starts to get pretty depressed, even though he may not realize it himself. His parents fight more and more, and he lets it affect him pretty badly. He even sees his dad getting more and more physical with his anger, even if it's in little ways. He puts his hands up and his wife's face starts mocking her like this, and that's what he sees from his room. And the shouting starts to get louder, and one time there was an eerily silent night, which he wasn't used to, and he got up in the morning and the dishes weren't done yet, and that was his main thing, there must have been a silent war that went on while I was sleeping. He starts to look back on when he was younger, and remember he's only 10 years old. People don't normally have those big look backs in life until they're 40 or something, and unless you're my age and you're like me, and I'm just oh crap, 7 years old. But yeah, he starts to do that, and he starts to think about when he was younger and he could hide under the dinner table and just escape little problems, just be by himself in his mind. And depression is for the most part an illness from spending too much time mentally in your past, and that's exactly what he's starting to do. He used to get enthusiastic responses from his dad whenever he told him about his interest in history class at school, but at this point in the story, his dad is starting to be pretty rude, saying that he can't talk to his son, he can't be there to support him because he's too busy doing dumb things like reading the newspaper or watching TV. So he's losing that male figure in his life that should have been very positive, but he gets more interaction and influence from the even worse male figure in his life. His name is Kevin, and he's the leader of this group of boys that he hangs out with called the Gang. They're not really bad, but they do set stuff on fire and stuff. That's their biggest rebellion. So ultimately, Paddy has no good male figure in his life at this point, so he's forced to be an independent man from such a young age. He's only 10 years old, and he has to think for himself at such a young age. Not all of this is just mental pain that's highlighted in the book for Paddy. Everything in his life just starts to hit him physically, literally. It's as if the universe wasn't getting the reaction it wanted out of Paddy at this point, and he was coping quietly and silently for the longest time. But at this point, he gets beat up by a bully in the book, and his gang doesn't really support him or get him out of the fight. A custodian has to come and help him. That's really embarrassing for him. Also, at home, his dad actually starts to hit his mom, and Paddy can hear all the noise and commotion, and just kind of rocks back and forth in his room, which is really sad. And this is his point of officially losing control. The troubles in his head are kind of, I think, seeping out into his physical world now, and this is when it all becomes really real for him, and it's affecting him in different ways. He even starts to fear his mom because of her own physical and mental deterioration from the domestic abuse. He notices her depression and fears her because of her dead appearance. Desperate and ashamed. Paddy gets so desperate in his struggles at home, he tries to seek help, and he does this by going to Kevin, the leader of the gang, and he's like, hey, isn't normal? Do your parents fight at home? And he notices that Kevin's just what? That's so uncool. So he's just oh, never mind. My parents don't fight. No. That's not a big deal. No, I'm kidding. So he's never mind. And then he goes back to being a sad old kid. And here in the book, Sinbad, his younger brother, starts irritating him in a conversation. And Paddy almost hits him, right? He tries to take control and be a Kevin in his own life. So he tries to hit him, and he's like, oh, he breaks down, and he's just so emotional. He starts crying when he's mad. And afterwards, he just like breaks down, and he starts to hug Sinbad, his younger brother. But he can't really feel any emotion, and that's like another sign of depression. He feels like he's hugging a statue. So the end of the storm, one day, this is like fast forwarding to the end. One day Paddy's father comes home really drunk, and Paddy has like this epiphany moment. He's like, I noticed my dad getting older and my mom getting thinner, and like everything just starts like, it clicks in his head like, this isn't gonna get any better. I have to kind of just separate myself from this and try to protect and hold on to what I can. So it seems he's accepted that, and he's not, like I said, nothing's going to get better. But everything dies down, and Paddy tries to be nicer to his brother Sinbad because he knows, I need to be this dad for my little brother. And he realizes he needs to protect his mom because she's really vulnerable too. He has a falling out with Kevin, the gang, which is kind of good for him, I think, but he doesn't really care about that. And he realizes his real responsibility to be the new man of the house. That's his dad's meaning. Okay. So most of the story, I think Roddy Doyle, the author, he incorporated a lot of traits and pointers to depression in his prose. And it's kind of hard for me to believe that he himself has never been as down as Paddy has in the novel mentally. Or he was at least medically accurate, I think. Paddy's searching for a safe haven in his past when he's only 10 years old. His regretting even attempting to seek help, and his depersonalization and loss of emotion when physically embracing someone that he loves or he knows he must love. These all show a downward spiral into mental illness. And his mom is kind of the same way with her domestic abuse. And I think the fact that she was quiet and didn't really reach out to help discouraged him from reaching out for real help. Because in his eyes, she seemed way worse off than him. That's all he sees. He doesn't see himself. What he's seeing is his mom physically in a corner, not able to speak for herself. So he's like, oh, if she's strong enough to be quiet, I can be quiet too. So I don't think, should this be included in BL AP curriculum? I don't really think it should, because it's not one of those books you should be forced to read. It's like I picked this up and I learned something from it myself type of thing. But also you can pull so much out of this one. It's it's deep in a sense that it's about a dark topic, but it's not symbolism here and there. I feel like other books would be better for English lessons, but I guess this would be good for a freshman English class if I had to put it into a BL curriculum. Because we read Speak our freshman year, and that was a girl's coming of age, and this would be a good one for a boy. And yeah, and I'd like to highlight, if I were to teach this or include it in the curriculum, I'd probably highlight the importance of the family and male figures for boys, whether they realize it or not, because that was a big role in this book for Paddy growing up and